Okay, everybody. Todd Crandell, founder of Racing for Recovery, doing our, I don't even know what number this is, 10 or 11 podcasts, 11? It's a podcast that we're doing. I appreciate you tuning in. And we have Gail and Bruce here today. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Are you nervous?
No.
A little bit.
Okay. Are you excited?
Yes.
Do you think what you're going to do today is going to help people?
I hope so.
It's going to, and that's the point of it. Why are you guys here today?
We were asked to do the podcast.
That's too
we
simple,
signed up.
Bruce.
Yeah,
that's true.
We're involved with the organization, so we do whatever we can to support not only the people that we meet here, but the organization as a whole, and to help anything we can do to get the message out, if you want to call it that. Glad to do it.
Why does that message of Racing for Recovery need to get out?
When our daughter was going through her addiction, we felt totally alone. Didn't know where to turn, how to handle her, how to handle what was going on. And she ultimately, didn't have the outcome we wanted. And we just want to give others, parents, loved ones, something to grab a hold of, and how do I get help and what do I do? And I don't know what to do with addiction. So somebody guide me through this process and that sort of thing.
I thought about what we were going to talk about, and I don't try and think a lot about these. I just let it flow. When I was making my lunch that I hope to eat at some point today, I was thinking of Lauren, and there's been a lot of amazing things that have happened at Racing for Recovery since 2001. And I think Lauren's situation is one of the greatest, not only a tragedy in how it came out, but how close we were to actually making the biggest difference in her life, and her and Barbie, who was lost as well. We didn't have the building when Barbie was going through this, and I know if we had the building, she'd be here. And I think if Lauren would have came in, I think her appointment was at 3, and she came in at 3:50. Yeah. And if she could have come in at 3, she would be here doing this today.
And she was 45 or 50 minutes late for her appointment, and although she couldn't keep the appointment at that time for her assessment, Dan spent a lot of time talking with her because he knew she was in trouble. And he spent, 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and when she walked out the door to go back to her car and leave, he realized she's in trouble, and he ran after her, but by then she was already gone, and he had tried calling her, but she wasn't answering her phone. So it wasn't, you tried.
Can you talk about what was going on prior to those days of her even coming here? Like, you adopted her, correct?
Yes.
So take everybody back to how Lauren came into your life initially.
Well, she was a week old when we first got her. So we raised her from an infant, just like any other child, and no different to us. Being adopted I don't even think of our kids as being adopted almost all the time. They're just kids, that didn't really play any part in our raising process. We had to be aware of it for their benefit, because sometimes when they get older, they have questions about being adopted and things like that. But otherwise, no. Just a kid. She's just a kid to us, just like our son. No difference.
Yeah,
I think one of the big issues, not so much from us, but from Lauren, she never felt she was good enough. Her birth family, she perceived didn't want her, even though that was the farthest from the truth. Another family had, the birth mom had chosen them for Lauren, and then Lauren didn't have medical issues, but the birth mom had gone through medical procedures before she knew she was pregnant, so the family that was selected didn't want to take any chances with what outcome Lauren could have. So then they chose us. We were part of the first batch. They didn't choose us in the first batch, but when they came back, they said, we want Gail and Bruce to adopt Lauren. So I think Lauren just always felt like she wasn't wanted, and towards the end she would say the only reason we have her is because we were forced to keep her. That if we could have given her back, we would have, and that was the furthest thing from the truth. But that was her impression and her self-image, that nobody wanted her and we're stuck with her, so that's what we're doing.
It's in our new book, Choices and Consequences. Lauren's story is in here, and it's another example of how I believe in what this program does. Is everybody that comes in here basically feels like that. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve whatever. And I think that's what separates us from these other agencies is I want to learn why someone feels that way. Somebody is never wrong for how they feel. It's how did you arrive at this feeling? And then what can we do to help you see that that's not the case and to start to find value in self? Did she ever get any type of therapy when she was growing up from this subject?
She had a lot of mental health issues, relatively speaking. She had tried to commit suicide when she was younger, like 12 years old. So she was in therapy for that. She'd been admitted to hospitals. So she was seeing psychiatrists and psychologists for a good portion of her adolescent life. I think one of the triggers is when they hit 18, they could no longer go to the the kid doctors, and they fall through the cracks at that time. So I'm not sure what all they discussed in there. Those are private between Lauren and her doctors. She was on a lot of different medication. She didn't really like the medication because it numbed her. She didn't want to be numb. She still wanted to feel. She just wanted to feel good, and that she had a lot of anxiety. She had a lot of health problems as well. She had a birth defect with her spine, so it kept slipping and pinching her nerves. So she was on a lot of painkillers for that from the time she was 15, 16 years old. So there's just layer upon layer upon layer. I think that all manifested itself in this.
Did she, either one of you can answer this, did she voice any of those feelings or concerns growing up? Like, I feel this way because of my back, or, did she discuss any of this, or was it like I'm going to therapy and I come home and I'm not saying anything?
She didn't talk a lot about the therapy. I mean, at least to me, maybe she did to you, but we didn't really know a lot of what was going on there. We assumed it was helping, and we took her to all the sessions. Sometimes we were there for part of it, and sometimes not. But we thought that, her issues were being addressed and she was getting some kind of help when she'd go talk to the therapist, and, seemed to be making progress. I mean, there was nothing obvious that stood out that she was having problems in her daily life. This was like a reaction to an event that happened that we thought, you really should go get some help about this, the symptom, that we observed. And when the symptoms stopped, like she was cutting herself and things like that and some other behaviors, we thought, well, we're making it down the right track now.
And that was the initial thing when we took her to therapy, is because we found out she was cutting herself. And the comment she made to me was she knew where it hurt then. She couldn't identify where the pain was. And if she cut herself, then she knew that slice is what hurt. And she, like I said, she was 12, so she wasn't really, her mind wasn't formed yet, and she's just a little kid then.
There's some stuff in our new piece on a much greater level than I'm versed in, that talks about the impact of trauma on the development of a younger person's brain. And this is exactly what we're talking about. The reasoning is not there yet. The coping mechanisms are not there yet. And that's why I think a lot of people who are hurting emotionally, eventually when drugs are put in front of them, they make that choice just to not have to deal with whatever's going on, So how did you hear about Racing for Recovery? How did you initially get here?
I drove by several times. I wasn't quite sure what it was all about.
Well, we heard the name from Lauren. It was the first time I heard it, because she heard the name. It was one of the organizations that her parole officer mentioned to her, where she could go to get an assessment, get help, and things like that. And that's the first I heard of it. I go, well, that's pretty close to us. That's great. We're going to live about 6 minutes away.
Okay, that's good.
So
convenient, right?
Yeah.
Right?
And she was still 50 minutes late.
It's funny and sad at the same time, right? Yeah. So you were driving by, kind of looking outside, trying to see.
Yeah, just, she was in jail for a couple of months, then she went to CAD, and when she was released, she came home. And one of her comments to me was, "You don't seem like you really want me home." And that's I want her home, but there was a lot of struggle there. It was just difficult. She was hurting, we were hurting. There was a lot of other stuff going on in our life besides Lauren and her addiction. I thought she could benefit from sober living or something like that. Her comment was, they don't put you in sober living after you get released from jail. There's always a reason why she couldn't do something. And I told her, well, let's go over here and get assessment, get an IOP with racing. She says, well, she'd have to check with her parole officer because they already set her up in some IOP. So there's always some excuse why she couldn't fulfill something that we wanted her to do, or something that we had recommended, or just go check it out.
Did she voice the desire to get better? Did she want recovery? Did she think she could get it?
Only at one point, and that would have been like the March before she actually went to detox in Cleveland. Okay, and this is when she dropped the bomb on us that I have an opioid problem, heroin. Up to that point, she had come to us and said, "I'm going to need some help because I'm getting addicted to my pain medication." She just mentioned it as medication and not anything to do with heroin or opioids or anything like that. And then within about a week, it was, well, it's really heroin. This is okay. Well, this was like, all right, we started Googling and everything else. This is totally foreign to us. We know nothing about this topic, right? So we're researching, okay, where can you go, for detox and get into a program, get some therapy, blah, 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 right? Get on the road to recovery. So we ended up in Cleveland for that. And she wasn't there very long. It was like she wanted out right away. They really wanted her to stay for an additional in-house IOP, basically, right? She goes, "I don't want to stay, I want out," So it was kind of a mix, The commitment was there up front, but I didn't see the determination to really follow through on it. She had the desire level, but not the determination, is my assessment of where she was. So it would come and go. And she'd even have, in some cases, I think in her own mind, she had different viewpoints. It was almost like a split personality kind of thing of where she was. I mean, we were up in Mackinac Island within a month before she died, and she told me that I've been clean for 6 months, but yet we had found drugs in her car and other things, and I think that was a figment of her imagination, or maybe it was her desire of where she really wanted to be, but it was not factual at all, So really confused by that kind of stuff.
We just did an educational group this morning on what people think recovery is and what they think it's not. And a lot of this conversation is reminding me of that. Somebody may, in Lauren's case, she may say, I've been clean for 6 months because she hadn't done heroin, but was still drinking or cutting, or it could be food or gambling or what have you. People's definition of what sober is different than others. And sometimes people come into treatment and they think what sobriety is, and it's not the case. Or they think what it's not, and it is. For example, people don't think you can have fun and it's like, oh, you can. Or somebody may come in and think, well, being sober, and we had this morning, somebody would say, well, it's just about not using drugs. And it's like, no, that's the catalyst to get you into everything else that sobriety offers. So it's always interesting to me of like what people think. It's not about right or wrong. It's just understanding what that person is really going through. And those are the things that I don't even from a marketing standpoint, I keep trying to think of, is there something that we could put out that would make someone like Lauren enthusiastic about coming here so they wouldn't be late? That's the stuff I think about a lot when Lauren comes up. I'm like, is there something we could have done or can do now to prevent this from happening again?
Well, that's the key thing on the support side. We're obviously on the support side, right? What can you do on the support side to make opportunities available, okay, to people? You can't make them think the right way, and you can't say, can you just get it and just stop? And you can't, the commitment to change needs to come from within.
True.
We can't beat it into them, right?
True.
But by making opportunities available where they continue to get the message, at some point the light bulb might go on, and they do start making the commitment. And that was always my viewpoint from a support standpoint, was I was willing to drive her to all her appointments and everything else. But there'd always be excuses why I couldn't do that. Like I'd offer to take her to her IOP meeting she was supposed to be going to out in West Toledo. It's like, you can't go there. There's drug dealers there and things like that, And really, I don't think she was even going to the meetings. She was telling us that she was going, but she was going someplace else.
And she would leave for an hour and a half or 2 hours, whatever she thought was the appropriate time to be away from home, to reflect that she was at a meeting.
Knowing how to install a GPS tracker was a key thing in that situation, and I never got around to doing it.
Yeah.
But when Lauren was in CAD, she had gained weight. She started feeling good, because she had gone 2 or 3 months without any kind of drugs. And she just would comment how good she felt. She looked good. Her skin was better. Her hair wasn't falling out anymore. So I think she really wanted it when she got out from CAD. But when we went down there to pick her up the day she was released, somebody else had already was there giving her cigarettes and things like that. I don't know what else may have happened. She came home. She wanted to go for a drive in the car. And it's like, okay. And she put the car in a ditch within 15 minutes. So I'm sure drugs exchanged hands as soon as she got out when she was standing on the street corner waiting for us.
Bruce alluded to this a moment ago about basically, I look at it as finding purpose out of this. Do you discuss, I guess, your role in coming to Racing for Recovery now, about how your story can resonate with someone else? Are you cognizant of the ability that you have on the prevention side, or the ultimate consequence of some of these choices? Or do you think like that, or are you still coming to heal for self, or is it a combination of both?
With me, it's very little healing for self. What I get out of it really is, we'll go back to when we first started coming, okay? It was like, okay, there's a support group there, and it's support for everybody. Person at our church, Ginny, is the one that first told us about Racing for Recovery. We already knew about it, but that she was going because her nephew Josh had passed away from an overdose, okay? I wish I had known that from her like a year earlier, that she was actually, I knew that Josh had died, but I didn't know anything about Racing for Recovery back then, okay? So we were coming to get the same kind of support that Ginny was saying, it's helped me to go, to be in that environment. And what I really get out of it, for me, is the understanding part of it. This was a totally foreign area for us. And for me to understand more about the addiction and to hear the stories from addicts themselves of what they go through, it explains in my mind what Lauren was going through a lot more than what I ever knew before. And with that understanding comes some level of comfort. I mean, it's kind of like when somebody dies in an airplane crash, it's like, well, you always wrestle with, well, what happened and what could have somebody done to prevent it and things like that. But with the understanding, it helps you deal with that type of thing.
So, sorry, Bruce, can you elaborate more on like what you've learned from our side of the street, so to speak, on my former self of a user, what you've learned from that's helped?
Well, it's really the behaviors of the addicts. I hear people relating stories, and it's made me connect to things that I know Lauren did. Like people have talked about, I can't remember who it was, but they were talking about the story about they were using their car to run people around, and they were basically running a cab service, right? And Lauren used to leave on various nights to help a guy named Dave take him to work and bring him back, thinking that she's doing this because she's a nice person. We think what was really going on now, what we learned from hearing from other people, is that I'm sure she was running a cab service and taking that money, and that was helping to fund her habit, right? So things like that, just understanding, what was really driving her behavior, what was she really doing when she was telling us this, she was really doing something else. And again, it just fills in all the gaps to say, okay, I think I understand now better what was going on.
I'm hearing that, and doesn't it show the intelligence?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? If that was just channeled into self-betterment,
Yeah.
I mean, look out, because I've never been in a room where there's more artistic, intelligent, compassionate, understanding people, but it's not applied properly.
Right.
It's misguided.
Yeah.
And when that can get guided in a productive manner, it's like you see the success stories that Racing for Recovery has, right? Gail, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I do. There's 3 levels I think that Racing for Recovery has helped me. It's brought me a peace. There was so much chaos going on that it's good to identify, okay, other parents have gone through this, they've survived. You see those that have been battling addiction and that they're coming out on the other side, and they're just genuine, loving people, and they, you go in there and they're full of hugs and they just talk to you, and then you have those that have also lost children, and the graciousness that they've shown us as we walk through the doors for the first time. And understanding as to what we were feeling, and Racing just telling us or allowing us to feel all those different emotions we feel. You have the sadness, the regret, what did I do wrong? What should I have done? And you also have the anger, and you just want to shake, want to shake Lauren and look what you're doing to everybody around you. You're at peace now, but everybody else is struggling to get through the next couple of days or the next month with you not being here, and there's no answers, and we're never going to get closure from you. So Racing for Recovery has helped me get closure on the conversations I've never been able to have with Lauren on the sober side. After she has gotten sober, and then I can go back and look at what she's done, and we can have those kind of conversations.
The other thing that really helps me is that in seeing the great success that I see in the people that I see here, it does me a lot of good to see the other people having the same success that our daughter couldn't. I don't know, it's kind of like fulfilling that gap that we had, but I love to see that. It just really makes me feel so good to see all the people, doing the right thing, and they're on the right track, and they're going to be successful in what they're doing. And your daughter, I think, summed it up on the trip to Colorado. What did she say about? She said something like, "Dad, these are great people," something like that.
Yeah.
And that sums up my opinion too. It's I've met so many great people here, and again, addiction is not something that paints you as a bad person. It's just something you did. It doesn't define you as a person, and we see this all the time.
The fact that my kids speak like that, that makes me more proud than, hey, I got an A on a science test. Not that that's bad, but it's not, the lingo is never those people. Yeah. My daughter, Skylar, who worked here this past summer, and people, they miss her because she's just a kind, compassionate person, right? Not a non-drug user person. And she looks at everybody that's in here just as people, not drug addict. That's why we don't have the labels in here so much, right?
And that's when we visited Lauren down at CAD. She was close to getting out of her treatment, and she said, "Well, I'm an addict, Mom." And at the moment she said that, it's like all the air in her just went out of her, and the life went out of her, and she labeled herself as that. And I tried to explain, that's what you do. That's not who you are. And you are compassionate and loving and giving and funny and a daredevil, and that's the essence of Lauren. It's not this 18-month or 2-year addiction spree that you've been on that ultimately ended in her death. I mean, it's just sad. And with me working at the university here, I'm exposed to a lot of different people. There's a lot of students there. I have a lot of younger people that work for me that their kids are coming up into middle school and early high school. And by me sharing my story with all of them, it allows them to open the dialogue with their kids. Because most of them knew Lauren. She would come to lunch with me and visit me at work. So they all had some sort of relationship with her. So it opens the dialogue for them to say, she just went down this left turn instead of a right turn, and she didn't plan on dying that day. That wasn't in her cards. We had planned to go to Mr. Freeze and get ice cream that night, and never made it. So those are the realities of what addiction does, and that opens the dialogue by me sharing my story. It just roller coasters over to others, being able to share my story with their kids and being able to open those conversations.
When forming our support group meeting format, I knew I wanted to do something different, and hence having our group with families, people battling addiction, and the public at large, right? And I have so much respect and admiration for the group that you're in with Randy, and Rick, and because to be able to watch you guys even walk in the door, just walk in the door here, let alone speaking the way you're speaking, it's amazing. And for me, we talk about empathy, humility, and gratitude. And the empathy that I know I'm speaking for all of us on this side of the fence we have for you guys is there. But the gratitude that I know personally, I'm not causing my parents that pain anymore. I can't put into words how much that means. And I've heard that from a lot of other people, that it's like, oh my God, I'm grateful I'm not causing that anymore. But just to hear you guys speak every week, it's gut-wrenching, but yet there's some healing in that. And that, I think that's what we're supposed to be doing. Or I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think that's what we should be doing, right? Yep.
I mean, I've healed a lot in the last 2 years coming here. The first time we walked through the door, Bruce and I were actually writing Lauren's obituary, and we were trying to figure out if people wanted to do a memorial for her, where could we put, guide them. So we actually walked through the doors to Racing for Recovery. It was actually on a Thursday night, and we let Dan know that Lauren had passed away, and to see him visibly shaken like he was, it shows me how much you care about the people that you're dealing with, and you really make that connection. And that's what started it. It's like we want Lauren's life not to be in vain. We want her to matter, and we want her, some good to come out of this. So that's, that was the intention of walking through here the first day, to see if you were open to having memorials come to Racing for Recovery. And then we didn't stay for the meeting that night. It was still a little fresh because it was only a couple days after she had passed. But we came to the next meeting, and, the first 3 or 4 meetings, I probably cried the whole way through. But that was okay. And then I started, healing, and you've really given me a peace that what has transpired, although it's not the path I would have written for my family, I'm helping somebody else. And by sharing her story, and by parents knowing that it's not easy dealing with a child that has addiction.
Do you feel proud about having her? I mean, I've seen her picture in our book and stuff. Do you guys feel proud that she's in this publication?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want her story. She was really such an amazing kid. I mean, she really was. She, it was about, being the daredevil, and just the love that she had for my mother, and I'm at peace knowing that she's with my mom up in heaven, and they're doing their little thing, and just all that kind of stuff. So I'm very proud of Lauren, and if I can share her story and have others realize what she went through, and maybe recognize some of their patterns, it might help. By telling Lauren's story, friends that she has been in high school with are also suffering from addiction, and they've reached out to Racing for Recovery and are coming out on the other side. So that's why I want to share, just to get the word out.
Bruce, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I would, just in my mind, I think that I'm hoping that what anybody that's in recovery would think when they hear our story is like, well, this is serious crap. I hope that's the thought that they have, and I know some people have made that comment in the meetings that they thank us for coming because they're seeing that side of it, and maybe it does emphasize a little bit. This is serious crap, and it really drives it home, I think.
I know there's been a couple of times where I've said that, I'll say, do you hear what's being said? You don't have to be the cause of that anymore. But having said that, I want people to know, yes, you don't have to cause that hurt, but you have to figure out what your own hurt is and heal that. That's the real ticket to this. It's not about, well, I'm not going to use so I don't hurt my parents. I mean, that's good. I'll take it. But it's more about, this program focuses on what are my hurts that when I heal, everybody else around me benefits from. And that's what Racing for Recovery stands for, right?
Absolutely. I think one of the things also, Lauren never thought that addiction would kill her. When she had overdosed several times in her house, we've had 911 out there to revive her. And she goes, well, Mom, if I overdose, all I got to do is pour ice cold water on me and I will come out of it. She's seen it happen before. So it's just the mentality that they have that, okay, they may overdose, but it's not going to kill them. And I think one of my messages is, Lauren never intended to die when she went upstairs at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and used. By 5 o'clock, she was gone. She just wanted to use before we had dinner. That last time, you do it one more time, it could be the last time you do it. And that's the message. I think, you've said it in meetings that we've had.
It only takes one bad decision, is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and it's just, I just want to use one more time to get that feeling, and then I'll be done. Well, you may be done.
Permanently.
Yeah.
Do you have any, I ask this of everybody, I think it's starting to become a theme. Is there, two things. Do you have any questions for me, personally or professionally? I don't really like using that word. And secondly, do you have any suggestions on how Racing for Recovery can improve?
Actually, this is just my personal opinion, but I really like the, I guess the original thought, if you want to call it that, in the name itself. Okay. I see a huge link between the addiction and I do the exercise thing. Okay.
Yep.
I ride a bike and I've started running a little bit. I've always hated running historically, but I've started. Okay. But the running things, biking is easy for me. I have no problem with that. When I took up running at the advanced age I am, it was a huge challenge. And the challenges I faced in doing that and running my first couple of 5Ks, I saw a huge parallel between that and someone who's in addiction. They're both challenges. It's like really what it comes down to is dealing with challenges. And reading one of your running magazines in the lobby before I came in here, I actually read an article where somebody made that statement that the running that she did, she was running typically 6 miles a day. When she started running more miles and training for a marathon, she made a statement something like, I found success there that I could apply to other areas of my life. Mm-hmm. And that's the key thing that I think you're trying to get at with the lifestyles, right?
100%. It's... people have I'll hear like, oh, it's all about running. And it's like, no, it's not. And it's interesting because the guy that created our logo, I didn't even understand why he created it the way he created it. If you look at the long logo where it's all written out, if racing is smaller text, recovery is bold. And the icon, that arc, it's a transformation of. So even with respect to Iron Man, I remember watching, and this has been documented, I've said it a million times, but I remember watching the Iron Man with drugs in front of me and thinking, that's a challenge. This stuff here this isn't a challenge. This is killing me. That's a challenge. And I just took the effort that I was putting into destroying myself and used sport as a way to enhance myself, not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, intellectually. And it's one of the reasons why I keep doing Ironmans, is because I want something to work towards in just that part of my life that then transfers over into other areas of my life. That's what Racing for Recovery is about. And that's what me doing those Ironmans is for. When I'm taking clients to them or people in our program, it's, yes, the event is cool to watch, but it's more of like, what are you getting out of this that's going to motivate you to improve your own life in your own way? That's what we do.
Success is contagious kind of a thing, right?
Yes, in your own way, not my way, but what's working for you. And I'm proud of that's what we stand for, you know? Gail, you question, comment, something you want us to do?
I mean, I think the whole mind, body, and soul really fit together. When Lauren got out of CAD, you know, she was all really focused and wanted to get into exercise and everything like that. And I had a hard time, like, where do I help her do all this? Where does she need to do it on herself? And where does she need somebody else to guide her along these paths? I'm just her mom. I think she needed to get others that she could lean on besides me. I was supposed to be her support person, you know, but I was 10 feet away from her when she overdosed. So all those types of things. And, you know, I really think the spiritual part that you have, to me, God always sends somebody into my life at the moment I'm ready to accept them and when I need them. And I think I see that with Lauren as well. When she was going through CAD and in jail, she really found a purpose with that again. She had kind of drifted away from all that. When she came home, she was really proud because she had completed some session there that she got a Bible. And she could have anything being scripted on there that she wanted. And she actually donated it or dedicated it to my mom and dad. So that shows their connection. And all along with Lauren going through her addiction, I just kept praying, please let her find peace. My prayer was answered. She found peace, not the way I wanted her to. And I hold on to that. As hard as that is, and as much as I want her back, somebody smarter than I, with greater good and greater vision, brought her the peace that she couldn't find here on earth. So that's where, you know, I really connect with that layer of Racing for Recovery as well.
That's riveting. I want to close with that. That's powerful. I appreciate you both coming here and doing this. I appreciate you putting Lauren's story in our book. And I know she wasn't lost in vain. There's no way. So thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you, Todd, for everything you've done for us.
It's all good. To those that just watched this was a riveting podcast with a lot of messages. If you are a family member who has someone you care about that's battling addiction, please contact Racing for Recovery. Watch this story, read about Lauren in our book, watch the live streams, get help, get a hold of us, racingforrecovery.org. You deserve hope, you deserve healing, and we can provide that for you. Until next time, have a good day.